Oh, should I start recording?
Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Omnic Lab. We're a podcast that focuses on the strategies inside of the game of Overwatch. We learn through trial and error here in the lab, even if things get a little bit crazy and sometimes blow up in our faces. We'll brew up team composition strategies, stir up some tips to help you play better, and hopefully equip you, the listener, with the instruments you'll need to gain that strategic edge. I am your host, Andres, aka I Play Games, and today I'm taking over the hosting duties. Unfortunately, Rob was not able to be here. He's stuck with his in-laws doing family boring stuff over there instead of rocking the podcast like we are. But in his absence, I'm joined today by two wonderful co-hosts. Today we have Icy Sorrow joining us for the first time. How's it going?
It's going good.
Icy is a moderator in our Discord and has now become a podcaster as well. She started her own podcast pretty recently.
Yeah, we're up to, I think, episode 3, so we're still pretty new.
Nice. What's the name of the podcast, Icy?
Enter the Iris.
Enter the Iris. I recommend everyone check it out. I think that Icy is very insightful, and she is here today to spread some of that insight. Also joining us, we have Melarina. How's it going, Mel?
Hello. I'm good. Good. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm super happy. I'm like surrounded by girls today for the first time in Omnic Lab. It's a special occasion. And today we are here this week to go a little bit over the topic of the art of team building. These two ladies are avid Overwatch players as well, and they both have played in teams for a little while. Mel actually just started her own team endeavors with us, actually, a team fully made of podcasters that so far has had a rocky start, but that's why we're here, to talk about our journey and how we're going to learn about it. Alrighty, before we get into all of that, I do want to give you guys a heads update, a little bit of our sponsors talk, and the stuff that keeps the podcast rolling. First of all, sponsors from Top Score Solutions, Ben, aka I Need Peeling, is offering free business consulting in the esports field. If you're an aspiring coach, starting a team, developing an app or service, or trying to boost your subscriber base, or just want to work in esports in general, you can visit his website at topscoresolutions.com, find him on Twitter at TopScoreEsports, or join his Discord server. Ben has a master's degree in sport management and business and marketing experience. His services are free while they allow, and they'll still free as long as the demands allows for it. Lastly, Omnic Meta, our partner Switch over at Omnic Meta, keeps cranking out amazing stuff. Head on over to his website to catch up on the latest meta trends, plus many more insightful articles, and all of them are backed up by the data that he extracts from the game. It's very cool stuff. I love the work that he does over there. Alrighty. Also, special thanks to our Diamond patrons and sponsors. You guys rock, you keep the show afloat, and you help us do things like attend BlizzCon or the stage finals of Overwatch League. It really helps us create a lot of content, and you guys are just an awesome support team. Special thanks to Ben K, Britmus, Chris the Playa, Golden Soldier A, Great Root Bear, Jeff B, Jeremy Banks, Lysum, Never Clutch, Not Meta, Jan Jinko, Ricky Dicky, Shazir, Top Score Solutions, of course, and Tragic Zach. We got no new patrons this week, but you guys are sending us so much love already that it's more than enough. Thank you so much, guys. Woo! Man, there's a lot to go over. I gotta give it to Rob. He does this every week.
Well, you just sit there?
Yeah, well, I'll just sit here and enjoy the ride. But yeah, there you have it, guys. Let's get right into the heart of things. I wanted to name this section from solo to full team because I think that a lot of us experience Overwatch as solo players for the most part. Building a team takes a lot of time and dedication, and a community of people that you can reach out to and bring together. How has your experience for both of you getting together into a team? Did you guys start at Overwatch just solo or playing with other people and then adapted to teams? How was it like that start with you? I'm going to throw it to Mel.
Well, actually, I've never really played solo because my husband plays like right next to me. So it's like, I mean, I've played solo a few times, but to be honest, I started the game pretty much always duo queuing. And I think that kind of started me out in this kind of team aspect. I had to learn how to mesh with Bob and really figure out how to play with him, and him pull me down, I pull him down a little bit at times to try to get the toxicity at an equal level here. But yeah, I've never really I've never really played a bunch solo, so I don't know what that's like. I imagine it's awful because I've tried to, like, when I'm angry at him, be like, I'm just gonna play by myself, and then I get in there and I'm like, this is such an awful idea.
What about you, Icy? What's your experience starting out the game?
Yes, I started out playing with some friends and then they got bored. So I ended up just soloing a lot. And then I got to like a higher level and they couldn't play with me anymore. So it's been pretty up and down. I wouldn't say that. But I think finding podcasts and like finding the podcast community like started me like on the path to finding teams and finding people to team up with.
So how was finding your first team? How did that come about?
So for me, I think you actually know the story with Andres, since that was the team that I first joined. I was asked to sub in as a support for, I think it was the Omnic / High Noon team, or maybe it was the Omnic team at that point, but one of them.
Yeah, one of those. It was really
fun. One of those iterations of it. Yeah,
it was like a million of them.
There was. People left, people joined, and all that. It's normal team stuff, but that was the first one that I ever tried playing six stack with, and it was great.
Awesome. What drove you to find that like consistent 6-player experience?
I think it's just when you're in pubs, it's very random at times. I think anybody in any tier can say, okay, I'm sick of having people leave my game. I'm sick of people picking Hanzo at inappropriate times, sick of picking Symmetra, Torb, those kind of things. I think with the stick stack, it's also really fun to experiment with strategy. It's just such a easy environment to be like, okay, let's try this. And people are there like, oh, that sounds cool. So that's really what drives me to like keep a team consistent.
Nice. What about you, Mel? What drove, aside from Bob, what drove you to try out a six stack?
No, it wasn't Bob. No, I think it's more so just the fact that I enjoy team play, but with a six stack that consistently plays together, I feel like you're always at a disadvantage if you play with a six stack that doesn't consistently play together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because likely you're going up against other six stacks that probably have more experience together than you do. So chemistry at that point plays a larger role than skill, I think. And so getting a six stack together and just trying to mesh, and I think we're on the casual side of a team, right? We're not like hardcore every night grinding 6 to 7 hours, but it's nice to just have the same people where you kind of know, okay, this person's probably going to do this, or this person's struggling with this, so we can help him with this, and they need to help me with this. And I think that it's a really more enjoyable way to play, as opposed to just getting frustrated with the one person that you randomly got that has no idea how to play the game.
Right. And I think that's a good distinction to make. When we're talking about playing in a team, we're talking about hopefully a consistent 6 people that you can at least play for a month or at least a couple of weeks together, different sessions of the same people or iteration of people, but not just random 6 friends that you found one night and went into comp to try to make things work, because we all know how that turns out sometimes.
Not so great.
Sometimes it works though. Sometimes it does work. But yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
It only works with Smurfs. It only works with Smurfs. Let's be honest. If you've got Smurfs, you're really killing it. But
That's good. That's good. Well, all right. Well, let's talk about after you guys joined your team. How was that first experience? Because playing solo and playing as a team can be quite different, right? Even on the play styles that you use on the same heroes. One hero you can play it many different ways, and the way that you play it in a team setting is slightly different than when you play it by yourself. How was that first adaptation, or were the first challenges that you guys found playing as a six stack?
I'll go first. It's fine. So after the Omnic team, I wanted to go find another team since it broke up at that point. So I put myself in a looking for team like chat in a different server. What ended up happening is that our team captain was very inconsistent, very very young. So we had a lot of trouble finding times and making times to practice and keeping consistent schedule. I think that's something I've definitely improved on and tried to like get better at with this current iteration of my team. I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles is just like consistency and practice times.
What about you, Mel?
Oh, what was the exact question?
What are some of the challenges you've found when joining that six stack, right? When adapting to the play style of playing six people, and well, did you have any trouble, or did you think, oh man, this is a walk in the park kind of thing?
Walk in the park. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we just keep winning, right, Andres? Like, it's just one win after another.
Oh yeah, since the debut we haven't.
Okay, so we'll continue to win. No, I think part of the reason that we all kind of developed our six stack was to kind of learn new players in a comfortable atmosphere as well. So, I know Deathblood's learning Tracer, which he's a Zenyatta main, and he does a lot of great work, and he's, still a high skilled player, and his game sense is really high. So I think us being all together trying to learn new roles was kind of just this mesh of like, okay, should I say something, or do they already know? Like, I'm my own worst critic, right? So I know exactly every time I make a mistake, and I don't mind when people point it out. I really don't, but some people do. So it's kind of like, if you say something like, hey, you should have done this, and they're like, I know, you're like, okay, well, I'm just saying, next time. But I think it's that hard kind of chemistry, understanding the personalities of the people around you and understanding how it's most effective to give feedback to that person. And I deal with that on a day-to-day basis where it's like I have 25 staff members and I can't give feedback to all 25 of them the same way. Some of them I can give it joking around. Some of them I have to be very direct. Some of them I have to be kind of beat around the bush type of thing, so they don't go in the bathroom and cry. But like, that's the type of thing you have to think about in a team atmosphere is how can I make this the most effective feedback? It's not about, reprimanding somebody for doing something wrong. It's about changing their future behavior. So if you're reprimanding them and it's not changing their behavior, then you're doing it wrong, right? Just because you feel better about telling them they did it wrong doesn't make the end result any better.
Right. And you're completely right about this. When you're playing in a team, especially if you're playing with your friends or people that you know and respect, and you're in a setting which is a little bit stressful, you're putting yourself out there. Like you said, your mistakes will be noticed, and some of your teammates might have the need to call you out on those mistakes so you can improve. And you do have to find that kind of middle ground. How do you send the critique without coming off as a douchebag or like you're trying to put him down or something? I think that, well, when you're playing solo, sometimes people have no regrets, or they'll point out your mistakes with no remorse, right?
Well, and I guess the difference is that when you're playing solo, you're telling somebody what they're doing wrong, hoping to modify their behavior potentially within the next like 5 minutes.
5 seconds,
right?
yeah. I need you to change it right now.
Right. So like a team play is very different where you're trying to modify their future behavior in the long run.
Right.
Right? You're playing a long-term game here. You've got long-term goals, not just this match, and then at the end you can rage at a player in a solo queue game because who cares? Like, I'm probably not going to get you again, and pretty soon I can just avoid you because you stink. But, like in a team, you have to look more long term. You can't look at it like, well, we need to do everything right, and I'm going to tell you every single thing you're doing wrong this one match, because it's just too much. There's too much to think about.
No, I completely agree. If you guys had to give one piece of advice to anybody who hasn't tried out playing in a team, or who's maybe thinking about playing in a team but hasn't made the move because or X or Y reason, maybe they don't have that many friends to form a team, or maybe the idea of having to work with other people gives them a little anxiety, or they don't think they're good enough to work in a team, what would you give as a piece of advice to those people?
I mean, I would say it's a more enjoyable game when you're playing with people with a common set of goals, right? So there's just such a random aspect to solo queue or duo queue even, and it's very easy to blame the other person. It's very easy to not work on your own gameplay if you're playing with 4 to 5 other random people. And the only way you're truly going to get better at this game is if you completely focus on your gameplay. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is in a team, because everybody else is trying the same way and they're trying to get the same effects. And so if you can do that, then you can become a better player, and then you can solo queue and it might be better.
It's funny because it actually is true. If you become a good team player with a consistent six stack, you find that some of those good habits stick with you going into solo play. What about you, Icy? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I'd say something similar. Like, it's different mentality going into competitive ladder versus team play and working with the team. And I think you just have to adjust your mentality going into each, because in a team setting, you actually know you can trust the people you're playing with. You have to make sure that you trust them to do their job, and you're not second guessing them all the time. Whereas in a ladder setting where you're solo queuing, doing whatever, I feel like you have to kind of like double check who you're playing with. If you don't know who you're playing with, you don't know the people, the randoms. It's just more of a situation where you're like, okay, I'm double guessing what they're doing. Whereas on a team, I feel like I am able to trust them. I know they know what to do in any given situation.
I feel like you have to realize that you can only control your behavior, right? You can't control the behavior of other people. So focus on yourself, and everything else should get better around you.
I like that advice. Cool. That was kind of the general primer of team building, a little introduction to that, and kind of let listeners know where you guys come from on teams. But let's talk about when people have decided, okay, I want to play in a team. I like what they're saying. I want to try out all of these things. They find the community. They found the people. Maybe they got together 6 friends. They convinced them to all dust off Overwatch and start playing again. And you're like, we're going to do great, guys. We're going to form a team. We're going to hit the ladder. We're going to go ham on this. Let's talk about what then. How do you get your team off the ground? The things that are required for your team to start working cohesively, and the things that you should be focusing on to improve your team. I think that the most important thing before you do anything with a 6 stack is you gotta define some goals. You gotta set some expectations and hopefully the purpose of your team, because from the get-go, this is a team exercise. You want to get everyone on the same page. If you have a teammate that, for example, wants to form a team because they want to make it to the Overwatch League, they want to debut and kill it out there, beat contenders, get noticed, and eventually be a professional. But then you have another person in your team who maybe their goal is to just break diamond. You're going to have a huge conflict of interest over here. And right off the bat, I think that the team dynamic is not going to be very healthy for neither of those players, because one of them is going to feel like he's getting held back. The other person is going to feel like he's not pulling his weight. And I don't know, it's just going to be a bad time in general. So How have you guys done it with your teams in the past? I see. How about you? Have you had defined any goals with your team? Like, okay, when to form a team because we want to do X, Y, and Z, or has it been more, hey, let's just play together and see what happens?
So the first team after Omnic that I joined, we entered a tournament circuit. They were looking for players for a tournament circuit within that Discord. So that's what I ended up doing. That was like the goal was, okay, they need 6, we're doing this kind of thing. From that team, I ended up pulling like 2 or 3 people to the next team, which then did the open, which was a disaster. And then we ended up pulling even a couple more people from that and just making the current team. We haven't really set any goals besides just figuring out consistent schedule, practicing comps, and just trying to get better as a group. That's pretty much the only goal that we've set.
Cool. How about you, Mel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to be very open and very concise about what your goals are, right? So you can't go in thinking that this is my goal. I don't really care what your goal is, because the whole part of building a team in a 6-stack is that you guys have a common goal. Whether it's to get everybody into Masters, whether it's to get everybody into Silver, it doesn't matter, you know? Like, as long as you have a common goal of what you're trying to attain, then you guys are going to work together better. And I think that's key. And I think you can't set unrealistic goals. You have to set, even if you say like it's a gold team and we want to get to Masters, right? You have to set more short-term goals in between that are attainable so that you can get that reinforcement of hitting those different goals. Or else you're just going to be like, okay, well, we made it to Diamond, but we never hit our goal. This sucks, you know?
Or it might seem like your team is not working out for the amount of time spent because your goal is a little bit too far off from reality, right?
Can't be so lofty, you know? Set attainable goals, set small goals, set things that you think you for sure can hit, you know, and then go from there, you know?
Absolutely. All right. Now, after you have set your goals, you're like, all right, team, we're getting together. We're going to break out of bronze. We're going to become the platinum menace. Everybody who runs into us is going to be scared shitless in platinum, which is, we want to be that 6-stack. So your goal is set. The next step to me is finding a schedule that works for everyone and that hopefully is consistent. And I think this is where a lot of teams fail at the start, and it's because they can't find that consistent scheduling. Maybe one or 2 of their members can't make it to practices on time, or just can't make it on certain days even though everyone's expecting them. Or maybe you get to practice one Monday but not the next for like the next 2 weeks. This type of inconsistency can really be a detriment for the team. And speaking from like a person that starts kind of like side projects like podcasts, or I start my own team, I have this rule, this golden rule, and is if you don't take consistent action towards your project in the first week or 2, it just goes down the drain. It's almost like you put it in the back burner and you forget about it, and it just doesn't happen. So once you have decided to make your team, you've set your goals, you've found your people, make sure that you can set a consistent schedule to start working on it and just being together, start bonding with your team, spend some time with them, talk to them, be together, jump on different modes of the game, find the heroes that you like working together, and like get that feel for each other. The more that you can play together, the faster that you will improve. And I'm sure that you guys can speak to that as you guys have plenty of practice with teams. Icy, how about you?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing we did for this new team that we set up was we set up a Discord to make sure that we had enough people for scrims, for practices. We decided to look for about 8 to 10 people with the varying. So when they applied, they were like, okay, I play support, I play tank, I play DPS, I flex. So when we were looking for people, we made sure we had ability to fill all of those, plus a couple extra. And then when we were making schedules, we decided, okay, Saturday is scrim day or 6-stack day. And then the rest of the week, we try and just group up as much as possible. So instead of having a day during the week where we all get together, since it's so hectic, we just have that Discord. It's pretty much looking for games channel that anytime anybody is available, they're just like, okay, I'm jumping on, who's available? And that just gets people getting better at playing together, at getting used to how each other plays. So it worked out pretty well for us so far anyways.
Nice. I think that our experience has been a little bit different, Mel, from the get-go. A little less consistent. But I would say that everybody in our team knows we're in it for the long run. So far that hasn't been as much of a problem, especially because we've all been playing together for a while as well.
For sure. And I think it was a little hard, like when we first started the team, then I went out of town for like 8 days and it was like,
Yeah.
sorry guys, go play your Pirates game while I'm gone. And then, I get back, we start to do a couple things, and then Deathblow goes out of town this weekend. And, but I think the best thing about a team, and the thing you have to keep in mind is, especially if these people aren't going to eventually get to the point where they're making money off of this, you have to make it a realistic expectation, and you have to make it so that real life can still happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So scrimming 5 nights a week for your diamond team is unrealistic. Like, that's not fair. Nobody wants to do that. And even if you do, you're going to get burnout so fast on the people that don't show up a minute, before the time that you're supposed to be there. And it just makes it a job more than it makes it fun. And I think that's what we've kind of found the balance of, is like, we're having a lot of fun right now and we're also improving. And I think we love Overwatch, right? We're always on Overwatch. So we get together pretty much 3 to 4 times a week if we're on, and that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you're right about that. I think that comes back to setting up realistic expectations. If you're in a point in your life where you can actually afford to dedicate a lot of time into this game, there's actually a lot of avenues that having a good, consistent team could be beneficial to you, right? Whether you're Twitch streaming, whether you're creating content with that team, whether you're going out and winning amateur tournaments and getting out there and getting exposure on your name to hopefully aspire as a pro player. Like there's a lot of incentives to start a team and put a lot of time and effort into it. But like you said, there's also a lot of people out there who have real jobs, have a wife or a girlfriend or other side projects out there in their
maybe
lives.
Doesn't play Overwatch.
That
like
maybe, that maybe doesn't play Overwatch. Bob is lucky there that you also enjoy his hobby. But yeah, like not other people share that kind of luxury, and to some other people, Overwatch is just something that maybe they use to calm their competitive drive. They just need that 1 or 2 hours a week, and they're good. And for those people, it might be more beneficial to find other guys that are around that same level. Hey, we just want to get together for 1 or 2 hours and one night a week and practice together and play your game. And that is a lot more realistic for that kind of person. And I think you have to find that balance, right? And hopefully find people that share that with you.
Right. I think it just goes back to common goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, find people with common goals and you'll have a lot more fun and you'll last a lot longer.
Yeah, your team will actually last a lot longer for sure.
I mean, we're pretty relaxed. I think also just like when you're going through making a team is just to make sure you find people that you want to be friends with, that you want to play with, that you enjoy playing with. So having an idea of everybody's mentality, like going in, and anytime you like would go to add somebody, make sure that the entire team makes that decision too. It shouldn't just be one person being like, okay, they're on, kind of thing. So
there's a lot to team chemistry.
Yeah,
there really is.
Absolutely. Let's talk about once you've found your scheduling, your sweet spot, you have your goal set, your team is there, you have the people. What do you actually practice together once it comes to the point to, put down the work, get the practice in? I put a little list of things that I personally think are the most important things to practice, but you guys feel free to also add anything in here. My first one in here, and they're in no order in particular, just things that came to my mind, but team compositions. Of course, in the game is one of the most obvious ones. What is your team going to play? Are you going to have people that specialize on certain heroes? Do you have very flexible people that can maybe play a lot of different roles so you can change it up drastically from round to round? Do you want to specialize in a particular style of the game, like a diving composition or maybe a death ball? Do you have a Pharah master that maybe you want to abuse, or a great Widowmaker player that you want to have it as your main threat? All these questions come to mind, and you might want to practice different compositions as well, but this all takes time, right? You gotta allow all your players to explore their heroes and then learn how to play their heroes with other people and form these cohesive team compositions. What do you guys like playing, and how do you practice this type of thing with your team? I see. I'm gonna go with you.
So we have been attempting dive comp. I say attempting because our main tank right now is a Ryan main. So we're experimenting with not only dive but also comps that revolve around Reinhardt, and just trying to figure out what we as a team are really good at, and then trying to like focus in on that. Doesn't mean that we're not going to try and do dive more. It's just we aren't going to be concentrating mostly on dive. I feel like it's one of those comps that's really good to start out with, almost because you're trying to cohesively focus one target down. It helps with communication. It helps with positioning. It helps with a lot of things. So, I mean, going into it, we wanted to start with dive, but we realized that that's probably one of our weaker points since we don't have really strong Winston yet. So again, that's something that we want to work on, and we haven't really figured out what our niche is yet. So.
Cool. What have we been working on in our team, Mel?
Oh God. I think one thing I want to bring up first is that it's so different being in a group and being solo queue in this aspect as well, because everybody tells you that if you're solo queuing, you should try to master one character from each class at least, right? Should try to be good on one tank, one healer, and one DPS. At least serviceable.
Yeah,
so
have
that
some
you can
have some
flex a little bit.
versatility. Yeah, just in case you don't get your particular role.
Right. But then you get into a team and it's like, okay, well, I'm really good at Mercy and Diva, say, right? But our Diva main is really good at Diva and Reaper. And it's like, but I'm a better Reaper than this DPS is a Reaper. So it's like all your roles kind of get sucked into one, and you're like, okay, it doesn't matter if you're a better Reaper than the Reaper that's going to play Reaper, because the amount of time that it would take to switch those two roles mid-comp is not worth it, right? So then you get stuck in this, we need to figure out these same classes, right? So now I need to be better at multiple characters in my own class so that I can switch between those. And so I don't know what's the best option to tell people to do anymore, because in a team it's very different than it is in solo queue.
Yeah, absolutely. Different settings. And you have had that experience because on our team, you are a great Mercy player and you're very used to Mercy. When you're Mercy, you feel comfortable, you know what to do, you know how to get out of tough situations, the whole thing, right? But being our main healer, sometimes if we as a team want to try out a different composition where maybe instead of a Mercy, a Lucio could be the best choice, you suddenly get thrown off of your element. And granted, part of team practice is, getting off of those comfort picks and learning other heroes that can complement your team and, making your team stronger that way. But it's definitely something that has been almost like been forced upon you now that you're playing in the team. Like you have never been like, oh, I'm going to be a Lucio player. But now they're in the team, you're like, maybe I should learn Lucio a little more.
Right. I mean, because when I first started, I was like, okay, I need to master one hero, because I had never played an FPS and I had just gotten back into computer gaming. So I was like, okay, well, this whole flex thing's not going to work for me. I'm going to be really bad at everything, or I'm going to master a hero, right? So I went and mastered a hero, and then all the advice given to me was you need to do a hero outside of your class, right? So then I went to Diva
Which
and
is not bad
Soldier.
advice, but it's definitely
Right.
advice targeted at a different setting.
Right. So now, and I like it. I like branching out as healers and stuff. And I like that I have a team that I can trust that knows that it's not my best hero. So they know to maybe pay attention to me a little bit more. And, you know, my wall writing's not so hot. But other than that, I think I did okay.
It's
I'll
all
get
about
there.
that song, baby. It's all about that song.
I know.
Yeah.
So
I can add on to that for us anyways. Since we have like 3 different support mains on our team, we decided to, and we kind of did this with our DPS as well, is each person is better at a certain support or certain DPS than the other. So anytime we would like to run, say, a Lucio, we have Skarm. He's an amazing, amazing Lucio.
Oh, don't even bring up Scarb. He's been coming up to the game nights, and I hate playing
have
as
you ever
Lucio.
played free for all with him?
It's great. So anytime we need a Lucio, he is on Lucio. I'm not going to actually go on Lucio because me compared to him side by side is awful. And then anytime that we need a Mercy, I would play Mercy.
Anybody
Anytime
compare to him side by side.
we have our third support plays Zenyatta. And then
But I
anything
guess
that needs to be filled between, we have I will play Moira, our Zen will play Moira, and then we have one of our flex players, he will end up playing Ana if we need an Ana. So we kind of
guess
assign roles in that
Right.
sense.
I
When we
guess you
have
get into the
people.
point though that like you have like a Houston Outlaw situation where you want Lucio on one map, so you put Boink in, but Boink plays Mercy like 2 of the maps, and you're like, what is happening? That's not what it's supposed to look like. You know, and so I don't know, you know, you have that kind of balance too, where it's like, okay, would it just be better to have one person that can flex between these 2 roles and one person that can flex between these 2 roles? Even though I know Skarm's a better Lucio than me, what if Skarm was in and I was in, and Skarm played Lucio and I played Mercy, and then when we switched, Skarm switched to Zenyatta and I played Moira? Even though Skarm's maybe a better Moira or I'm maybe a better Zenyatta, it's still kind of balancing those roles out where it's like, we need to be able to switch on the drop of a hat, not, okay, I'm going to switch right now. When you die, whenever, you switch as well. Or next round, we'll switch out to have somebody else. I feel like that's where we get kind of in the mix up of things.
Yeah. And your team is doing some next level meta stuff. I see. Like you guys have like Lucio specialist and versus specialist that you can swap out in and out. Like that's some like Overwatch League level stuff right there.
So we need 6 people, okay? And
Yeah, I think at this point we're just trying to play to our strengths rather than force something to happen. I think that's just, since like if I'll sit out because they don't need a Mercy, I am recording the VODs, I'm watching the VODs, I'm analyzing the VODs. So that's also another fun thing for me, is just also overseeing like how the team comps, how the strategies are going, taking notes. So I'm there still watching, but it's been fun.
Have you ever thought about having that specialist be the one that watches the VODs of like, say, you on Lucio instead of them on Lucio? You know what I mean? But that's, right. But that's the name of the game, right? It's like, tell me how to get better. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like,
it definitely puts you on the spot right there. But yeah, if you're trying to improve at a hero, having somebody who's an expert at the hero is probably a good idea for them to go over your gameplay and be able to point out like, hey, you're doing this, this, and this that I wouldn't do. And it can be very insightful that way. I agree.
Yeah, I can touch on some of those points later when we talk about VOD reviews.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you'll definitely touch on all of that stuff. Really quick, other stuff that your team should be definitely practicing, aside from team compositions, is map strategies. Not only does the team composition matter, but how you use that composition on the map matters quite a bit. And as we have seen, there's many ways to play the same type of heroes. For example, dive comp, you can play very aggressively where you're taking the fight to the enemy, or you can also play it very defensively where you're hiding and hoping that your opponent overcommits before you make that jump. Same with shield heroes. You can play very defensively, or you can play like a death pile style team where you're using those shields to take the fight to the enemy rather than using your range. How has your team been practicing this type of thing? Because you said you've been practicing a lot of dive, so I'm sure that different ideas on how you should approach the composition have come up from different people.
So the first thing that we started to just kind of target down at least is who is our shot caller when we are diving. So we decided to make sure that the DPS are not shot calling. They only thing they have to worry about is killing the other team and whoever we put the Discord on. We had our Zen start to do more shot calling. That helped a lot. And then I don't think we've had Scarman enough matches to see how he shot calls, but he's a quieter guy. So usually it's going to fall either to myself when I'm playing Mercy or when I'm playing Moira, or our Zenyatta player. So that's usually like how we start it for dive anyways, is just trying to figure out, okay, who's our shot caller, what are the priorities that we're diving, and then just like positioning on certain maps is I think the other thing that we started working on with that too.
Positioning is very important, definitely a part of your map strategy. Deciding where your team is going to stand to defend, or what flank is your team going to use to get around, what side of the payload you want to go on, or if you want to hide and attack, if you want to retreat. All that information definitely is something that your team has to practice, because playing solo, sometimes this is very hectic, right? You don't have very much control over where people are going, and sometimes one person can easily get out of position, and it's kind of up to you to try to pick up their mess. But when you're playing as a team, you have a large amount of time to decide previous to the game what you would like to do, hopefully reducing all this randomness and all this like nonsense of people just walking where they shouldn't. They should at least have an idea of where you want to be hanging out, or of where your DPS likes being, where the supports likes being, where you need your tank to be to defend those two the best as possible. All of this has to be decided and practiced by your team. It is not enough to just say, hey guys, we're going to be holding up here. This is it. It's not enough. Overwatch is a very dynamic game, and you need a constantly evolving plan that hopefully your team knows. If you lose this area, when do you move next? Where is the safest place to retreat? When is the best place to go on the aggression? And those things are not super intuitive. It takes some time to practice with your team to get everyone on that same page so that people are not getting out of their turn. What about you, Mel? Playing with the team, what's been your experience with positioning, with using the map strategies in that sense?
I think one of the biggest things that we kind of encountered when we were doing our like King's Row, which we have yet to play, by the way, our King's Row like map out, and like where call outs are, and like what you're calling out, what it should be named and stuff. I think one of the biggest things I took from that was that we have a shot caller, right? We have one person that's calling the shots, and everybody should go to that person. But if there's a person that's completely out of position on the other team, we need to target that person as well. And the shot caller can't always identify that person, right? So how do you effectively relay, McCree is in the back line killing everybody, but we could all turn around and kill him very quickly, right? In a very short snippet of like 0.2 seconds.
As long as we're all on the same page, yeah, you can make that happen very fast and turn it around on them.
Right. So I think that was the biggest thing that I've learned. I've always thought like, okay, you shot call, you always go with the person that the shot caller called. And it's a very fine line between calling out a different target if you're not the shot caller, and everybody's focusing on a different target because they're half health, right? And then nobody dies.
Yeah.
So
definitely a big distinction between shot calling and like relaying information. I think that's a big distinction to get through.
And I think maybe just that ability to, in the moment, be like, yeah, I know Diva's a quarter life. We need to all transition back to McCree, right? Like, that's hard. Like, nobody wants to leave somebody at a quarter life and be like, forget it.
Like, I call it the tunnel vision effect, because you see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? You see that Diva so low that you're like, oh, if I just stick to her with just a minute longer, but your team might be calling another target, like you said, and maybe you not turning around immediately, the Diva might be able to get health from the Mercy or something, and you might not be able to finish her off. And because you didn't turn around to kill the McCree, then the McCree survived as well. And now you didn't kill the Diva
And it killed your
nor the
Zenyatta.
McCree.
And, like, it's like a downward spiral from there. If everybody's not on the same page, at least the majority of the team, you're really going to struggle, especially if the other team is on the same page.
Let's transition a little bit to that, to callouts and communications, because they go hand in hand and they're slightly different. When we are saying map callouts, we are talking about locations in the map. A lot of teams, once they've been playing for a little bit, and I don't think this is something that you should immediately enforce on your team. I think that there's other stuff that has a little more priority. But as you start gelling with your team and you start practicing a little more often and you want to get a little more specific on maps, one of the best things you can do is name each place on the map a specific name that everybody in the team can recognize just by immediately after you say it. And what we mean by this is on in Kings Row, we recently had the exercise with our team where we just join a random game. We all walked through Kings Row, and just labeled everything. We labeled things like hotel, statue, window, rafter. Sorry, I'm forgetting some of the names already. And you're muted, and Mel.
Oh, balcony, hallway.
Yeah, there you go. You remember them.
I wrote them down. See?
Yeah. You did your homework. I'm proud of you. But it helps.
Flashcards later, Andres.
You did a quiz. You should definitely do it.
You have to pass before you can play with us again.
If not, you're out of the team. No, but it helps a lot because it can make your team react very quickly. If instead of just saying McCree right, you can say McCree behind statue. That in 3 words puts a very specific location in the mind of everyone on your team. If everyone knows what statue is, there can only be one behind statue, right? Do you do this with your team, IC? Do you
That's actually one of the big criticisms we got at our last VOD review from Rob, actually, was instead of just being like Genji right, we need to be Genji hotel, Genji low hotel, like being very specific, very to the point with our call outs and just getting better with that, especially with locations, because we haven't been doing that as well.
And to be fair, you can go a long way by just using right, left, front, or behind, right? As long as
only if you really know your right and your left.
Oh yeah, if you're not like
and
me.
I have a struggle. We're like, right, and Bob's like, you mean left? And I'm like, yeah.
Oh my God.
But I mean, like when you're facing each other and you say right, you mean left for him. It's just gets chaotic. It's better to put in reference of the point or an object.
You definitely have to come up with a point of reference. Usually, if you're using right or left, I use the spawn as your reference. So if you're staring from spawn into the point, that's your right, that's your left, that's your back of the point, and so on. But your team has to be on the same
you're getting
page.
Killed. You're like, it's my right.
It's definitely not as specific and not as efficient. Definitely naming everything is the next level of that. It definitely makes things a lot easier for everybody. But as you're starting your team, right, left, back, it does the job. But yeah, get a little more specific to improve your team. And on top of that, comms. Let's talk about comms a little bit, because you guys have already pointed out a couple of different distinctions that I think are important. One of them being your kind of like your playmaker, the main person that says, okay, guys, we're going to go right, or we're going to go left, or we're going to go above the point and around, and then we're going to try to flank this person over here. Like a person that just makes the general plan. But on top of that, like you said, IC, there's also the relaying of information that is not necessarily a call out, but sometimes there's certain pieces of information that are very relevant, like a soldier being out of position, or a widow being out of position, or a Genji sneaking into the back line. Those pieces of information can drastically change your game plan on the spot. And just because your playmaker said, we're all going right, if you're all going right and then you see, like, I don't know, a Junkrat just walking by himself left side, that is an opening right there. And your team should capitalize on it and having somebody else that maybe is not the playmaker being, guys, Junkrat alone in hotel room or something like that, where you can be like, okay, let's just go take him down real quick. We got a 5v6 and now we have an advantage. Let's do an evolving plan like that. What's your experience with this, IC?
So the other big thing that we are doing call out wise is cooldowns. So we are really good at knowing when cooldowns are down, when we can go in on certain
Nice.
people, when a res is down, when reflect is down. So calling that out helps a lot. One of the things we are trying to work on more is knowing when ults are up and knowing when we can go in with an ult. Saying like a Zenyatta ult, we're saving for like Zarya or a Blade. So I think that's one of the things that we're working on. But as far as callouts go, usually does fall to the shot caller, and whether we're going in, whether you relay that information of if somebody's out of position, it still goes to the shot caller of, okay, we are shifting to this. That way, nobody's just jumping off randomly by themselves, hoping that your team's following. The other big thing is if your supports are getting jumped on in the back, that should be a priority, whether you're in already or not. You should be turning around. You should be listening to them because they're the ones keeping you alive. So that's another big thing that we're trying to. I know, right? That should be something that they're
preposterous. You have to pay attention to your supports? I thought that they had to pay attention to you, and that's it.
You, but
they're just there to support you. Like, come on. Okay.
Yeah, you're not there to support them. Jesus Christ. No, I'm just kidding. Definitely pay attention to your supports. That's one lesson that you will learn the hard way, especially once you start playing against teams that will capitalize on you leaving your backline open. You will lose to those teams very fast, as we have experienced that before, Mel.
What? Yes. Yeah, it's very bad. And I think, especially when you're back in the back lines and you're like, the Winston's killing me. The Winston's killing me. The Winston's still okay.
I'm dead.
And they're like, Mel, if you could call that out just a little bit earlier. And I'm like, literally, I said it the first second he got there. It's just that tunnel vision, right? It's like
it is.
Nobody listens until you're like, okay, I'm dead. And they're like, oh, I didn't even know you were dying. You're like, oh. But yeah. I think it's important. I think there's a lot that goes into communication. And I think you have to fix clogging the comms. So you have to make sure that people aren't just talking about random stuff that's irrelevant to the fight, whether it's in between fights or whatnot. Like, that's fine. Just make sure it cuts off, right? And I don't care why you didn't do something or if you didn't do something. And I'm guilty of this too, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Like, that's not relevant information that I should be communicating. Like, it's just taking up space where somebody could be saying that Zarya just used her bubble or Tracer's pulse one's down. Like, all of that information, if you have all of that coming in, you don't have room for the other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So making sure that that goes out. Also, making sure to have everybody on the same page on when to retreat and when to engage. Because that's where I see our biggest issues of, like, people are like, should I go in? Should I stay out? But by the time you say that, if you should have gone in, it's too late, right? People are dead and now you shouldn't go in anymore. But if you shouldn't go in and you've already gone in, then you're staggering your team. So it's just this fine balance between, like, who's calling that? And there needs to be more than one person. Because if somebody's dead, maybe they aren't seeing everything, right? So you can't just have it on the Winston of, like, hey, you call if we retreat or engage. And if they're dead, they're like, oh, retreat. And you're like, okay, that's not always the call.
I agree. At the end of the day, I think that everybody has a little bit of responsibility in communications of at least letting everybody know what they're up to, maybe what they're struggling with, update the team with relevant information that they might be aware of, but nobody else has mentioned. Being the one who speaks out can sometimes make a little difference there. And it also ties to one point that I've been thinking about, and that is team awareness. And I think that this is a personal skill and then a skill that you can develop as a team as well. It's both. And when I say team awareness, is your ability to, whether you're a support, DPS, or tank, be able to know what your tanks are up to, what your supports are up to, what maybe the enemy team is trying to do to your team. Being able to keep up with where your tanks are moving so you don't fall behind as they're moving the front line up. Maybe keeping up with your flanker, seeing if he's ready to do the flank or not by just looking at his position in the map. Being able to keep track of your kill feed so that if you're hitting straight to the point and you suddenly see 3 of your teammates die, it doesn't take you 10 seconds to realize that, but you immediately are like, oh, even though nobody has made the call out, you already know that that fight might be over and you're already turning around kind of thing. Or maybe when you see your Genji make a certain move, realizing, ooh, he's getting on the aggression right now. He saw something and he's making a move. Let me follow him and see what's up without him necessarily having to communicate that. I think that the more observant that you can be and the more information you can digest of your team and what the enemy team is trying to do, the better team player you're gonna become in the end. Can you guys speak to this a little bit? Have you found that playing in a team has forced you to have to become more aware of the other people around you?
Yes. Yes and no. I mean, I think it's like I have to become more aware of the people around me, but I'm already very aware of the people around me because I'm a support main, right?
Well, yeah, that is kind of your
Yeah.
job, yeah.
So I kind of know about everybody around me. It has forced me to be more aware of the team around me. Not like I was always aware of the enemy team around me, but more so like analyzing what their next move is going to be, right? So
Mhm.
like, why is the Genji going up top? Why is the Tracer flanking behind,
Yeah.
and trying to anticipate those moves as opposed to just being like, Tracer's coming behind, guys.
Right,
Somebody help
but
me.
Finally said, "Oh, Tracer's going behind. He might want to get under McCree, or well, that's a bad example. No Tracer wants to
Right,
get under
like
McCree, but
Tracer's gonna get Zenyatta. is
yeah,
usually what's
there you go.
happening.
Thank you. Well, how about you, IC?
Um, I don't know. Like Mela, since I'm a support main, I'm already pretty aware of what's going on with our team, with the enemy team. Like surroundings, positioning wise, is usually like key for me. I feel like I'm less worried about that almost with a reliable team, with a reliable 6 stack. I'm less worried about telling them that they're doing something wrong because I know that they know what they're doing. I know that they're going to do the correct thing. So I again find myself in a different position, I think, than if I was in like solo queue, is be like, okay, this guy's out of position. I better probably heal him because he's gonna get killed otherwise, kind of thing. So that's just where I'm coming from, anyways. It's just I feel like I'm less worried about it because I know my team is reliable and they're not dumb.
I guess it's more so about my team awareness of when my team is not doing things for the team,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So like in solo queue or in duo queue, it's like, okay, you don't expect that, right? But like in team comp, it's like, okay, Diva, you should have come back and saved me. Like, this Widow just killed 3 people, your 2 supports included. Like, you should have come back and saved me. And that's more of the position that you're looking at, in my eyes, is
There's
those
an
other players on the
expectation
team.
of
It's like,
teamwork rather than like, oh, they helped me. Oh, great.
right. When in all reality, in solo queue, that's not really effective. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can probably go back and save your support, but it's really not going to help much. It'd be better if you killed 4 people before they got back, as they trickle in. So it's just a
Different game,
very
yeah.
different mindset.
Cool. No, I think that sums it up a little bit. At least the things that I think are very important for your team to practice together, to put in some time, your priorities. Of course, there's a million other things, and the more that your team improves, the more nuanced the things that you have to improve on. But at least these are some general guidelines in which you should be looking at once you get your 6 stack to improve. One of the fastest ways to improve all of these things, in my opinion, is watching VODs, filming yourself, and then doing a team exercise where you can come together and watch a single person's perspective on how a game went. And this is super, super insightful. I know that it can be a little bit intimidating for those of you who've never done it before. Record yourself and then have another 5 people sit down and kind of critique your gameplay and tell you why you're doing things wrong. Can be sometimes intimidating, but it can also be a very eye-opening experience. It doesn't even have to be your perspective. Sometimes watching another teammate can give you a lot of insight of what's going on, because sometimes you can only see things from your perspective inside of the game. You have very brief windows when you get killed, when you can see another person in your team's perspective, and usually doesn't tell you much, since at those points, you're not adding anything to the battle. But going in afterwards and seeing what your support is doing, what your tank is doing, how are they moving, what are the things that they're struggling with, were there points in the map where you could have helped them and you didn't? Were there points in the map where they could have helped you and they didn't? And being able to point those out and be like, hey man, you notice this thing here? I called this out and neither of us kind of moved on it. Next time we should listen to that and do this. Or even like simple things as strategy miscommunications. One person might think that engaging the front line might be the best way to do it. Another person might think that flanking through one side was the best decision to do. And in the game, both of you kind of went for different decisions, and neither of you was aware of that. But just being able to watch it live and talking about it is like, oh, I see why you wanted to do this based on this information, or I see why you wanted to do this and we should have done that instead. I don't know. It can be very, very eye-opening in that sense. Do you guys watch any VOD reviews, I see?
Yeah, so actually I just wanted to touch on that. Since we rotate out our supports, we rotate out our extras. One of us usually, if we're doing scrims, will be in spectator mode. And having just somebody stay in spectator mode above the point, above the capture, payload, whatever, is actually super helpful later on when you're reviewing, because you're able to better see everybody's positioning. You're able to see enemy positioning, how you set up for fights, how team fights end up. So I would definitely advise, if you have somebody able to record scrims, have them do it in spectator mode, because it is a lot easier to see the entire perspective instead of just one player. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a VOD review for something personal, definitely from first person perspective is probably the best. But if you're doing it as a team setting, do it in spectator mode.
Cool. That's good advice. What do you think of our VOD reviews so far, Mel? Have they been helpful?
I mean, yeah, I guess I didn't get much feedback in a VOD review because it was on our tank. So it was like, I don't know where Mel is, but people are staying alive kind of, so it's cool. But that's fine. I think from a behavior analytics standpoint, it's more so looking at that, like, video feedback is effective, but it's only effective if it's paired with immediate feedback in the situation, right? Like, how many times can you say, like, oh gosh, I just did that wrong, right?
Right.
But the more often you do it wrong, the more often you're building that learning history of doing it wrong. So it's harder to change. And I think just positive, like, practice and repetition of the way you should be doing it is going to be the most effective, or people giving you that immediate feedback in game. So say you go for a VOD review and you're like, hey, you were out of position here. The next time we play a game, somebody needs to call you out if you're out of position, because we've already talked about it in the VOD review. You've already been given the feedback. Now I'm going to call that out, right? Like, this is our target goal. So if you're out of position here, I'm going to tell you. And then in the moment, that person can move and be like, you're right, I need to be over here. Because unless they get that experience of doing it the right way, your mind just goes to muscle memory, right? It's like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. That's where I'm at, because that's where I'm usually at. Because 1,000 times out of the 1,020 times you've played this game, you've been there.
Yeah, that is very true. And I think that it can also help you spot certain problems or weaknesses that your teammates might be having. In the VOD review that we did, you're right, we reviewed our main tank's play. And I remember that during the match, there was a couple of times where he got completely erased. As Reinhardt, he went from 600 to 0 a couple of times. And it was like, wow, there is nothing none of us could have done to save him because he died so fast. But rewatching the VOD, it became very obvious that it was the enemy Hanzo timing his scatter arrows to his fire strike. So it was kind of a mistake that he was making himself a little bit too vulnerable and having an enemy constantly capitalize on that. But during the game, none of us could catch that, right? Like to us, it was like, whoa, what the hell happened to our Reinhardt? Why did he just
Right.
disappear out of nowhere? But
I was
rewatching the
healing
VOD
you.
review, I was like, oh, I think that you're just lowering your shield at maybe a too much of a risky time. And maybe if you want to do that, you should get the aid from your Zarya so she can shield you while you're at your most vulnerable and turn that bad situation into a great situation for us. So just like being able to watch those little small things that you cannot catch in the game can make you a better player almost immediately.
For sure. It helps you know what to communicate, right? Like dropping shield, somebody help, right?
Yeah,
And I think
and it
that's
allows
the most
it allows our
beneficial.
teammates to also be like, okay, now I know that if or Reinhardt puts down his shield, he's gonna be super vulnerable, and a good enemy is gonna capitalize on that. So now let's help him when he does that. And you might, as a teammate, you might be looking out for that particular instance while you were not doing that before. All right, cool. I think that'll do it for at least practicing as a team. I have a couple other things in here that I just want to go with pretty quick. They're not particularly practicing as a team, but they go hand in hand with improving as a team. And this one little part over here I named the I in team because you do have to work on yourself a little bit, even though it's all about that teamwork. There is some homework that you gotta do personally when you're playing in a team. For example, Mel might have to practice some more Lucio on her off time. I personally have been practicing a lot of Widowmaker. I was a little rusty with her, and we've been playing with the team, and I've been thrown in that role quite a few times. So when I practice with you guys, I want to be in tip-top shape. I want to be hitting my shots. I want to feel comfortable in her. So on my off time, I've been going into the practice mode, hitting a couple of shots against Anna's, practicing my hooks, make sure those are doing good. I've also been practicing my Genji, trying to get my burst damage in line so that, when the opportunities do arise, I don't just whiff all my shurikens and then my team is like, what? How did they kill that? Well, it's because Andres didn't hit a single shuriken on that guy. You want to be able to work in yourself constantly like that. Working on your personal mistakes, weaknesses, watching your VOD reviews, having people point them out, or just seeing them yourselves and then internalizing them and improving on them. That is a task that you yourself have to do. Your teammates can't help you there, unfortunately. That's all up to you. And also diversifying your hero pool, right? Like we talked with Mel. Now she's being thrown into a few other supports that she was not as comfortable with before, but it would benefit the team greatly if she is able to diversify there a little bit. Same with me. I'm not particularly a Pharah person. I'm not super comfortable with her, and even though I enjoyed playing her a lot, but I know that I'm not the strongest in it, so I might have to play her a little more here and there so that when I get thrown in it, I don't just look like a fool and make my Mercy look like a fool because she's dying all over the place because of me, etc., etc. What do you guys think of this?
Air. I need you in the air.
Yeah, I think talking a Pharah through playing with a Mercy is definitely a team oriented thing. Like going into just like duos with your Pharah and just playing Pharah Mercy is something that would really help, I think, in general. It's something I need to do myself.
Anything you guys want to add in here, or pretty self-explanatory? I think you're muted again, Mel.
And I think just repeated practice and breaking that like history of behavior, right? Like, so we all develop habits and just trying to break it down into like small steps of like, I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this. And like going into the practice range or going into free for all and just trying to build a muscle memory of those mechanics is what's going to help you in the future, right? Like free for all is not going to help you in a team game by any means, but it's the best way to get that kind of like repeated exposure to real people.
Oh, yeah.
try to work on those mechanics, and don't do it the easy way. Do it the way you should do it, right?
Right.
Don't
There's no
take
shortcuts
that
to improving. You gotta put in the work.
right, but I'm saying like if you know that you could do it this way and still kill them, like don't do it that way. Like do it the way that you want your muscles to remember, and
Oh,
just
gotcha.
continue to do it
I see what
over
you're
and
saying.
over and over again, and it'll come back to you when you need it, right?
Yeah, and I think that free for all can be a great place to practice your mechanics. You're not gonna learn how to play in a team on free for all, that is for sure. But you will learn the timing of deflect. You will learn how to dash through people. You can practice your widow shots. You can practice your Ana grenade lobbing, for example, or the timing with your sleep dart. You're constantly thrown into mini duels and free for all, and you do need that constant practice to be able to clutch it when you're playing with your team. So I think it's worthwhile, at least mechanically speaking. And there's a lot of other modes where you can spam that sort of mechanic practice. There's the training grounds. People do anabots as well to practice certain aiming techniques. So there's a variety of things that you can do for sure to get that practice in. Last thing I wanted to mention, and very important part of it, is once you've put in all of this practice, you gotta take out the team for a spin. I mean, nobody wants to put in all of this time and never joined a tournament or at least compete against another team. So where do you take your team once it's formed and once you've been practicing, you got all the call outs out? I mean, you can take it out into the competitive ladder. That's one way to do it. But, sometimes it's nice to show off with some of your other friends, or even in a more competitive setting like an open tournament online, or even a live tournament if you happen to have one happening in your city. One of the most common ways to do this is setting up scrims online. Another great way to practice as well. There's a ton of websites out there. You can do it through Discords. You can do it through Reddit. If you have a large enough community, you can probably organize some inside of a community. I know that with Omnic Lab, there's a few teams that hang out, like there's ISIS team. There's a few teams around bronze and platinum. So you can ask around in those communities and see if anybody is down to practice with you and set up just a practice match. Find that partner and go to town. A huge thing about finding a practice partner is that you can really elevate your game of both teams while playing together, and it opens up another huge area of practice options. I think that for example, practicing maps several times in a row is something that you normally don't get the chance to ever do, and I think it can be a great way to improve in a particular map very fast. Because let's say you play King's Row once and you realize, well, you made all of these mistakes, but then you move on to the next map and you never get a chance to iterate on those mistakes or to try out the same strategy again. If you can do it 2 times, even 3 or 4 times, even better, because you start to internalize everything a lot faster. So I think that's a huge benefit of finding a consistent partner or other teams that you can scrim against, and maybe set up your own personal rules that are not tied to the ladder. Have you guys ever done this, Icy?
No, I can't really speak to that too much. Sorry.
But you do set up scrims and practice against other teams, right?
Yeah, we've been trying. We haven't found a consistent practice partner yet. Maybe you guys will be our practice partner for the next
I'll
couple
try to
weeks.
convince my team. I would love.
That'd be great. It's been pretty scattered. We have a couple teams that are like, oh yeah, let's scrim, and then it just doesn't work. So,
and then you destroy them, and they're like, nah.
I mean, we've had it both ways. We've had us getting destroyed. We've destroyed them. We haven't found a good, like, consistent, like, it's a good game kind of like scrim partner yet. So we're still looking for that. So if you're up for it, hit us up.
And that's harder said than done, right? And one of the reasons why we're doing this episode is we want to encourage people to team up a little better. I don't know why in Overwatch there's this huge stigma between like forming a 6-stack. Like sometimes you'll go into a 6-stack with a ladder. This hasn't been my experience lately, but at least like a few months ago, you would hit the ladder with your 6-stack. And people be like, ooh, 6-stack in 2017? Where are you, man? And it's like, what? This is a team game, man. Where is your 6-stack?
I think, to be honest, the 6-stacks have gone to the wayside because of the matchmaking, right? It's like you're in a 6-stack and you're all of a sudden matched with another six stack that has probably played together a lot, so you're going to lose if you're a random six stack. And then, you're matched based on all six ranks, right? So you're either higher or lower, or like it's hard. And I think grouping in general has been difficult for Overwatch to balance.
Mm-hmm.
Also, on teams when you start getting higher and higher up, the SR range becomes an issue. And at a certain point, you need them to be on Smurfs. You need them to be on alternative accounts to be able to play with them, which becomes an issue when you just want to be able to queue in to comp with them.
I do remember that.
Quick play with the six stack is just stupid. It's not going to work.
It's not
you
as
have
fun.
to go into comp.
Yeah, and I do remember we've run into some problems when we were playing back in the day, all of us together, and we were all close to hitting masters, or a few of us were hitting masters and a few of us were high diamond, but like one person was like stuck in like 2979 or something like that, like about to hit diamond, and just because of that you couldn't queue up together as the whole team that you've been practicing the whole time. So it was like it's kind of complicated. So I can see it going to the higher ranks. It gets very tricky playing in a six stack, but you don't have to play at the higher ranks. You can make scrims, like we said. You can join tournaments. You can do all kinds of things when you play in your six stack. Hitting the ladder, yeah, once you start getting up there, problems start to arise, but that's a conversation for another day, and definitely a topic that is better addressed by Blizzard than it is by us. Whoa, Mel transformed! All right. The last thing I want to leave you guys with is a little bit of advice, just an attitude. I think that being part of a team is much more than just practicing and grinding out heroes and scheduling and finding the people. I think that making a team is your attitude has a big part to do with forming a successful team. To form a good team, you gotta be on learning mode. You gotta have a humble attitude. You can't be a know-it-all. You have to be ready to teach other people. You have to be ready to learn from other people. If you don't have that kind of respect or patience for others, you will more than likely find yourself without a team very soon, because people will just run away from you. And also, you need to learn how to lose as a team. You can't take things to heart. And especially if you want to see your team improve, you have to be ready to lose with them. One of the big things starting out our podcaster team is that a lot of us are playing roles that we're not used to playing, and we have to all be sincere with each other and know that when we jump into the ladder with those roles we're not comfortable with, we're probably going to lose a lot of games until we start getting the hang of it, until people can find their groove with those heroes. And you have to be okay with those things, because if not, how are you going to improve? You're just going to get stuck in the same place forever and ever. So elevate those around you and elevate yourself. That's my Zen quote of the day. Help others to help yourself. Anything you guys want to add?
I would just say that it's really easy to give constructive feedback, right? Everybody notices the things you do wrong. Everybody notices when something doesn't work. But try to remember to give that positive feedback too, because it is crucial. It is helpful to know that I'm not doing everything wrong.
Yes. Balance it out, yeah.
And even if it's a team positive feedback, even if it's like, you guys, we did really awesome on point 1, we just really have to work on point 2 and 3, right? Like giving that positive feedback and letting people know that we're working towards a common goal and we're doing better than we were before is going to help. Not everybody has that in themselves to do that. So,
yeah. And I think the other big thing in a team setting opposed to ladder is don't worry about your SR. Don't worry about like your it doesn't matter in a team setting. You could give better advice than a GM player. It doesn't matter. They might just be very good at one specific thing. They might be good at amazing things. But like it's a team setting, you have to be focused more as a team rather than on personal ability. So don't feel bad about giving a GM player advice. Don't feel bad about getting advice. It's just be very open and available to learn in that kind of setting. So,
and don't debut at Omnic Lab game night.
Not if you want to keep your dignity.
Humility. Yeah.
Next month, guys. next month.
Oh, we're coming. We're coming back.
Still probably lose. May's not invited.
Woohoopy. That's the May.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not
Woohoopy,
invited.
I love you. You can play after we finish.
That's
Mayo.
hilarious. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode of the Omnic Lab. Thank you so much to IC and to Mel joining us today. I'm going to leave you guys with an iTunes review, this time by Jester from the USA. He gives us a 5-star review and says, Omnic Lab is the first Overwatch podcast that I listened to. After the first listen, I was absolutely hooked. No pun intended. I like it. Both Rob and Andres do an amazing job breaking down everything from casual, competitive to pro play, along with all the juicy details in the middle. I really value all the ongoing deep episodes as they go into great detail with each character in the game, as well as bringing on high-level players for their insight. Thank you for introducing me to the wonderful world of Overwatch podcast. P.S. The intro still gives me goosebumps when I hear it. Oh, that's awesome. That makes me very happy. That was the whole intention of that intro. Thank you so
Who
much.
did the intro?
I produced it. My friend Javier played the guitar. So yes, it's a big compliment for me. Thank you so much. As you guys know, leaving iTunes review is the best way to support the podcast for free. It helps with our visibility as well as it warms our hearts every time that we read them. So keep it up, guys. We love when we get them. Also, if you want to find Omnic Lab, we are on Twitter under the same name, Omnic Lab. You can find us on Patreon if you want to support us financially. As we said before, it helps us a lot keep upgrading the show, keep attending events, and keep producing the best content that we can for you guys. We are on YouTube as well under the same name. Join our Discord community, a huge Overwatch community right now. It's super chill. It's super fun. We have game nights. You can find Icy. You can find Mel in there. We're all in there. It's a party. So don't delay. Join it. We like hanging out in there. You can email the podcast over at omniclabpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send us any feedback, any business inquiries, any sponsorship opportunities, you can send it all over there. You can also find all of the archives on our website over at www.omniclab.com. If you've missed previous episodes, you can find all of the show notes. All the details are in there. You can also find me on Twitter personally at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games. And I'm going to give Rob's Twitter over here. You can find him at NotRob. Where can they find you, ladies?
So you can find me at Icy Sorrow on Twitter, and then it's Icy Sorrow at Twitch TV. Podcast-wise, we are at Enter the Iris Podcast on Twitter, and same thing on Twitch. So we usually record Monday nights. I forget what time exactly. I'm bad.
No worries. Tell us a little bit about your podcast, I see. You recently started it. I've listened to a couple episodes. I thought it was really good. You guys are very insightful, and you give a lot of good information. Can you give us a little brief summary of it?
Yeah. So we are a podcast about self-improvement and meta. So we kind of focus on just like self-improvement, good tips for improvement, and then kind of touch on just like a meta topic of the week. So last week we touched on anti-dive. We kind of just been progressing through dive, how to counter it, what's in dive, what variations are of it, and we just kind of continue that way. So it's been really fun. We also have a segment on women of Overwatch and just kind of try and highlight the women that are in the scene right now, which is like Geggery, and then also the new GM of Spitfire. So we kind of just try and touch on that every week as well and see
And me and
in
you,
the
I see.
future. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys definitely. I am glad that you guys made it over here. And what about you, Mel? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Overwatch. You can find me on the Cavalry. I host the Cavalry. It releases every Monday. Yes, we don't do live on Twitch. I took it over, and we don't do that right now.
You're too
But,
hipster for that.
Right. But you can find us on iTunes or anything like that. And then I'm on I'll Recap with Andres and Bob. So
You are.
yeah, we'll be going to stage 3 finals. Woo!
Woo!
That's it.
Awesome. Yeah, make sure to check it out. Enter the Iris and the Cavalry, both super good podcasts that these ladies are a part of. So if you want to keep up with them and see what they're doing, you can find them over there. Again, thank you so much for joining us, guys. And like Rob would say, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. See you next time.
Bye.
Where's my music?
You totally played that part. Where's my music? Keep that in.
We're keeping everything in. Thanks to everyone in the chat. It was super active today. All of Icy's and Mel's fans are here, as well as their teammates.
Yeah, a lot of teammates.
Yeah. They wanted to hear what we had to
Very
say.
distracting
Yeah,
teammates, guys.
they want to make sure that you didn't,
They're
talk
like, "What are
badly
you
about them on
saying
the
about
show.
us?"
Yeah.
Walk in harmony, my student.
Alrighty. I do want to set up that scrim with you guys, with Icy, you and your team,
We're
Chalk,
on it, yeah.
and I see
They're
Big Brother
excited.
in here too.
Yep.
Some of our teammates are not as excited, but I'm trying to convince them. I think that it would be
good.
cool.
It'll be good. Don't worry, we have to go and actually practice, so I think you guys would be good partner for that.
All right, guys. Thank you. Y'all have a good night, okay?
Oh my god.
Yeah, you